the end, you can sum it up with your closing remarks.
And thank you for inviting me today. Really, this is the right format in which we should conduct conclaves or sector-specific conclaves, because just giving speeches and lectures is really passé. I must compliment Mint for this format. It's the right way to really go about this subject. It also gives me a chance to interact with the audience, from the audience.
And we will make sure there are audience questions as well.
And I want to acknowledge something today. I was told in earlier days, and an illustrious participant from the energy sector just told me a few minutes back, that in earlier days, all such energy conclaves were all about power and oil and gas. It's very redeeming to see that now renewable energy takes center stage when we talk about the energy sector. So thank you, Mint, for talking about India's green future.
Oh, thank you. I think, like you said, it is the future, right? So we have to talk about it. Okay, I'm going to start off by asking you about something which has already been achieved, but I think it's extremely significant, which is one nation, one grid, and one price, right? I think it's one of those fundamental reforms in the power sector, which is true, right? I mean, today power is the same everywhere, cost?
No. Let's be clear about it. Power is purchased by discoms through power purchase agreements, which have been sustaining for years and years. We have every state having their own power purchase agreements. Some would be as low as 25 paisa for a hydro station which was set up 50, 60 years ago. 94 paisa for a hydro station which I visited only earlier a week ago in Salal, Jammu Kashmir. And then there could be a power station where the power may be 5 or 6 rupees also if it's been recently set up in a far off place where it is required. When we talk about one nation, one grid and one power, the concept behind that is about the energy exchange. We are trying to create a robust transmission network across the country where power can seamlessly flow all times of the day. So anywhere in the country, people need additional power over and above their contracted loads in the short term or in medium terms. They should be able to get that at the same price, anywhere in the country at that point of time. It doesn't mean that price will remain the same throughout the day. So in this 15-minute window, if we just open our phone, we may find a price. The next 15-minute window, it may be another price. But in the past old days, particularly in areas where transmission was a bottleneck, let's say South India, there were times when people in South India, in Telangana, in Tamil Nadu or Kerala, would have to pay as high as 11 or 12 or 13 rupees for every unit of power. While at that same point of time, it would be available, let's say, in Odisha or Chhattisgarh at maybe 3 or 4 or 5 rupees. Now, that is the situation we are trying to change. We want to ensure that we create a robust grid across the country. Power can flow seamlessly wherever required, and at one price, which is determined every 15 minutes, through a transparent exchange mechanism, power should be available for people, for discoms to buy.
Okay, as you came in, we were discussing renewables, right? And I think you just missed the part where one of the panelists said that in most Northern European as well as Central American and South American countries, a lot of the renewable power is hydro. And I think one of the areas where we've not really grown as fast as we could have grown is hydro. So much so that now solar seems to have supplanted hydro as a preferred renewable thing. What are your plans for this? What do you think we need to do to get growth back in the hydro sector?
It's a lovely question. In fact, that's my priority area for this year. But like any good parent, I don't distinguish or differentiate between different sources of renewable energy. Be it solar, be it wind, be it hydro. I believe each one has an important place in the energy mix and basket of India. Having said that, solar needed a little bit of a thrust and personal intervention at the highest level, because when I became minister in 2014, India had a solar base of only 2,400 megawatt. Now, a country of the dimension of India, where even preliminary estimates suggest that we have the capacity to make 7,48,000 megawatt of solar. If India, after 32 years after the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy had started as a separate department first and then become a full-fledged ministry, 32 years after we started our renewable energy program, India had 2,400 megawatt solar. Therefore, a particular thrust was given on it. The solar mission was scaled up by 5 times. So instead of a target of 20,000 megawatt by 2022, we reset the target to 100,000 megawatt by 2022. And thanks to the support of all the participants in the solar sector, using modern technology, using economies of scale, and the most transparent system of procurement that one could devise. And on that, I'm sure there would be consensus around the room too. We've been able to drive down prices by over 40% in barely 18 months. We bid out about 20 gigawatts, that's 20,000 megawatts of solar projects last year. And that has given a boost to this sector, which will certainly help us achieve our target of 100 gigs by 2022. People asked me earlier in the year what would be my target for this year or area of focus. And I have been explaining that this year has been dedicated to wind and hydro. I'm trying to see if we can get consensus around the wind sector to upgrade their scheduling and forecasting mechanisms and systems so that states and discoms don't get stressed while buying wind power and they can manage their grid efficiently. At the same time, hydro has been a sector where we saw some wonderful work happening 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. But in the last 10 years, it's been quite a stress sector. More so with the stalling of 4 or 5 very large and important projects. I'm sure you're all aware about Teesta, for example. Teesta was a project where 9,000 crore rupees had been invested. It was a 1,200 megawatt project. 90% of the work was completed, 90%. And it had stalled for a variety of reasons. It pained me when I became a minister to find that the investors are fighting with the promoter, is fighting with the state government, is fighting with EPC contractor. It was a complete mess. And it also had 5 international investors, which means we are giving a message to the world that your investment is not safe in India. We got down to the drawing board, sat with all the stakeholders, and I'm delighted to share with you about a year ago we were able to resolve all the differences, get that project back on track, and recently the first turbine has been charged, and I think by March the project will be fully complete and start generating 1,200 megawatts of power. And more so, this was a national waste, national wealth. Ultimately, banks had financed it and valuable Indian resources had gone into making it. So imagine a 90% complete project remaining stalled was actually a loss for each one of us in this room. Similarly, we have a serious problem with Subhansiri, which has been again stalled for I think by now 5 or 6 years. It's the largest hydropower plant in India. I think 2,000 megawatt or so. And it pains me that it was originally expected to generate power at 1 rupee 87 paisa per unit. On revised estimates, now if we restart that project, and of course we'll have to restart about 6,000 crores originally, and by now about 10,000 crores may have gone into that project. The cost of power is going to be upward of 5 rupees per unit. Now imagine the colossal loss to the nation because of this delay. But we have been having dialogue with the local residents of Assam who have stalled this project. The state government of Assam is now willing to talk and find a resolution to this subject. Arunachal Pradesh CM met me only 2 or 3 days back. They are very keen that we find a resolution. And it also helps that now both states are ruled by the same political party. So I'm quite hopeful that we'll find a resolution to the problem, and instead of them fighting, earlier also they were ruled by the same political party, but I think now we have a party which is far more decisive in taking actions and decisions than the erstwhile party. So I'm quite confident we'll be able to resolve Subansiri and get that on track. And as a business journalist, Sukumarji, you will appreciate, nobody is going to invest in a sector where already thousands of crores of rupees are stuck in stalled projects. Any sensible businessman only goes into a sector where he doesn't find stress and problems. Once we sort out these problems, I'll be able to attract new investment in the hydro sector.
What are your plans for Uttarakhand, where after the court ruling, for instance, I mean, it's completely stuck, and it doesn't look like you can move forward there.
Uttarakhand is a little peculiar situation. We've had a couple of very serious ecological concerns or issues in that state, because of which we have to be extra sensitive to what happens there. The NGT is seized of the matter, the Green Tribunal. The courts are having regular hearings. So I would like to leave it to the courts to take a final call on that. Matter being sub judice, any comments I make may be prejudicial to the entire process. But we, as the government of India, are keen to see that we balance the development needs of the state, of the power sector, with environmental concerns, and both will have to coexist. We can't do one at the cost of the other.
I'm going to speak about one of your favorite subjects, which is coal. We are still dependent on thermal power to a significant extent. I want to ask you two questions about coal. The first one is, while we talk of renewable energy and clean energy, surely there must be a way to make energy from coal a little bit cleaner, right? Which is the first one. And the second one is, we are now producing enough coal, but we still continue to import coal, right? Which is something that can actually be avoided. So what are your thoughts on both of these?
Very good questions. In terms of using coal more efficiently, looking at clean coal, you're absolutely spot on. In fact, I have had meetings with MIT, with Australian universities. We are working with academics and research labs to look at better and more efficient ways of using coal. We are simultaneously also, in fact, it's almost mandated, as Mr. Rajdan will confirm, that in the future we will not permit anything less than a supercritical plant, so that the pollution levels are kept at the barest minimum. Going forward, we may even have more ultra supercritical thermal based plants coming in. We are looking at, I've stopped all RNM, the repair and modernization of old plants, which really was only money being sunk into keeping those plants going, but adding to environmental concerns and pollution hugely. Maybe at some point of time it was necessary when there was a power shortage or India didn't have enough capacity. Today I think we can live without that. So I'm not encouraging, or in fact not even permitting, any RNM activity on old plants, but I would hope that gradually we can phase out the over 25, 30, 35-year-old plants, so that new and more efficient plants come into play. Simultaneously, we are looking at cleaning coal, so we're setting up 12 washeries. We have made sure that only crushed coal goes. That improves the efficiency of these thermal plants. All in all, in the efforts to improve the quality of coal has resulted in the station heat rate, SHR, of the thermal plants in India in the last 12 months, improving by about 2.9%. It may sound small, but to somebody who works in the coal and thermal power industry, it's a significant improvement. Going forward, we're also looking at encouraging coal to gas, maybe syngas and stuff like that, coal bed methane, liquefied gas coming out of coal, all modern technologies and efficient ways to use coal, but keep it within the ground and get the energy out of that coal. I'm also working with engineers from IIT on carbon capture and usage. While carbon capture and storage has so far been successful, we've not been able to locate where we can store this carbon. So really, I'm not very excited about the storage part of it, but I'm working with the engineers to see if we can have some economically viable end use, capture the carbon and use it to add value in some other product. Carbon black is one product that we are doing research on. So we're doing a lot of activities to try and use coal more efficiently on the one hand. On the other hand, you raised the issue about import of coal. Clearly, we have a situation where on the coking coal side, most of our reserves are under fires in Raniganj, Jharia, that belt. So we are not able to mine coking coal and we continue to import large volumes of coking coal. In fact, today I had a meeting with the Energy and Mines Minister of Bangladesh and we were discussing, they have some mines there. We were talking about seeing if we could jointly work those mines and they hold coking coal and see, they are in that Raniganj belt on the border. So we're going to see if we can generate coal or get some coal out of that and use it both sides of the border. Having said that, I'm also working actively to see if we can douse these fires in Jharia. It has some very huge dimension of resettlement and public cooperation and collaboration required. We are working with the government of Jharkhand to try and make that happen. Till that time, of course, coking coal will continue to be imported. But on the thermal coal imports, the story is a very sad story of India's mindset. We had a problem of coal, we had a shortage of coal for several years in the past. Sadly, instead of focusing our energies to increase the output of coal, particularly when we had 300 billion tons of declared reserves, of which over 140, 150 billion tons were easily mineable. Instead of ramping up production, as the government under Prime Minister Modi has done in the last 2 years, for years and years, India took the softer option of planning our thermal capacity, our power plants, based on imported coal. We assumed India can never be self-sufficient in coal. So our design of power plants only is based on imported coal. And today, despite having large volumes of coal, I'm not able to give it to these plants because they still don't have the ability to use domestic coal and they're dependent on imported coal. I've talked to BHEL, I've talked, my coal secretaries in a continuous dialogue with NTPC, with other private players, to sit and work with them. If they could start blending at least a part of their requirement with domestic coal, we are trying to make it an economically viable proposition to them. We are working with railways, with coal consumers and within the ministry to try and replace as much of this imported coal as we can. Going forward, my own sense is that we'll still have scope for reducing the imported coal with some design modifications, but we'll have to wait and watch what the technical experts say on that.
Do you think we'll meet our plan of 40% of our energy coming from renewable by 2030?
Well, in the Modi government, there is no "do you think" available for us. The only option that I have is how much percent will I exceed that target.
We've spoken about coal, we've spoken about wind, we've spoken about hydro, we've spoken about everything else but gas. And I know you have a view on gas. Does it...
What is your assumption?
You're not very bullish on gas.
Not at all.
No, you are?
I'm extremely bullish on gas. Only thing is I cannot leave my power plants open to a pricing which is based on the Henry Hub, which at one point of time was as high as what, 12 or 14 or $16?
Yeah.
Right, at that price point, if I was to contract gas and get gas to India and try and make power out of it at 8 or 9 rupees a unit, of course the states and the discoms would kill me, but the people of India will throw me out. This guy doesn't deserve to be a minister. We can't, India can't afford power at those abnormally high prices. What I need is gas at an affordable price by which I can run my gas-based power plants consistently for years and years to come and serve the people of India with affordable power. So my price point, as I can determine it, is about $5. I've been talking to companies and governments around the world. And if you want to know, in the last 4 days, I've had this conversation with 4 sets of people, including yesterday in Chennai with representatives of one of the world's largest gas companies. Day before yesterday in Delhi with representatives from the United States of America. This afternoon with people from Europe. So it's gas is at the top of my head every day. So please don't be under the impression that I have some negative views. What I'm looking for is longer term contracts so that I can consistently supply gas to my power plants, help them run regularly at an affordable price. I'm happy to look at a band, but not something which leaves me totally open to the vagaries of the market.
Which is fair enough. How open are power distribution companies to procuring renewable power?
Well, I think it just needs to be explained in the right context to them. It's not as if they are open or they are closed. It's a question of the understanding whether renewable power should be looked at as a burden or whether it's a value add in their portfolio in the long run, just like hydro was 50 years ago. After all, when hydro projects were set up, Bakra Nangal, Satluj, Yamuna Link, all these projects that today, the Salal plant that I mentioned in Jammu, all of these today are like gems. They are supplying powers at such affordable prices that we can't even imagine them, any of us here. And renewable energy at that. To my mind, solar, wind, and all of these projects that we are setting up today have a similar story. When you contract at 4.5 or 5 rupees for solar power today, you are actually going to get power 25 years later at the same price. So it's something we are leaving behind for the children of the country. It's in some sense reflective on our intergenerational equity. We are enjoying the power that Bakra Nangal and all of these companies are giving us for something our forefathers did. I do believe it's enjoined on us to leave some good for the next generation also. Having said that, there are challenges because the country has a little bit of a power surplus situation. We've been able to get all the stalled projects largely back on track, which means a lot of new capacity has been commissioned. The renewable thrust is adding to power. There are certain concerns about wind, particularly related to scheduling and forecasting the availability of power at the right time. So all of these issues we are working with in a spirit of collaboration. Maybe a little nudge here and there is required.
Sure. The reason I asked you that question is because of reports which I'm sure you've also seen, that some distribution companies were not meeting their renewable energy purchase obligations. And the reason cited is the illiquidity of the renewable energy certificates. So,
frankly, this renewable energy certificate and subsidies and all of these will have to gradually become passé. The country cannot plan such large projects, such large targets on the back of subsidies and REC certificates and all. So our effort now, solar is completely standing on its own. I need to support domestic manufacturing for some more time till they get economies of scale and modern technology. And I have no doubt in my mind, and we have Rahul Gupta here, maybe others from the manufacturing side. I have no doubt in my mind India can withstand any competition from around the world, save and accept any dumping that may take place, for which there are other ways to stop that kind of dumping. So I'm very confident that without subsidies, we'll be in a position to make this stand on its own. Now companies like REC and PFC are lending at single-digit rates for renewable energy to good companies. We also have had a rate cut yesterday, which has given a huge signal to the growth imperatives of this country. We would obviously hope to continue to see this kind of impetus to our growth agenda, not necessarily only in interest rates, but in the overall ecosystem.
But you wouldn't say.
Don't take back a headline.
No, I was going to ask you that. Yeah, but you wouldn't say no to an interest rate cut in December, right?
No, I would value and welcome it, and I'd write another Facebook post. Welcome it. I think I wrote one day before yesterday also. Or it was only yesterday?
It was yesterday.
It was only yesterday.
Yeah.
So I think, and jokingly, one of the players, a large player in renewable, in your conference was mentioning to me that probably the next solar bid we may actually discover prices below 4 rupees. So things are moving fast. Things are changing for the better. I've also asked my office to study going forward if we can look at escalating renewable energy pricing so that we can start even lower, and that would make it more attractive for the DISCOMs to buy this power. We are working with the states to see that the must-run status is respected. I'm meeting all the power ministers day after tomorrow in Vadodara for a 2-day power ministers conference. My 5th since I became the minister. And I don't think ever before in India there would have been such regularity of interaction between the states and the center. Uday has been widely accepted by all the states. Of course, Uday isn't a magic wand. It's not as if in Uday I've doled out thousands of crores of rupees, which is available to the DISCOMs to strengthen them. I'm answering another question.
But it's all right. I was going to, obviously, any conversation with you, one has to ask about Uday and one also has to ask about Ujala, which are the two schemes that are in some ways representative of what you've done. But please carry on.
I was only trying to mention that Uday is the first time we have done such a comprehensive overview of the power sector, addressing different problems at one shot. But secondly, it's like a naughty boy being given a rap on his knuckles and not a chocolate finally. So till you keep giving a naughty boy a chocolate again and again and again, he's going to remain naughty. It's only when you give a rap on the knuckles and don't give him that chocolate that the naughty boy behaves. And in some sense, Uday will positively cause some short-term pain, but it's in the interest of India as a whole in the long run. So we've not given 1 rupee to any DISCOM. In fact, my cabinet note, and imagine a note of such large dimension, which is one of the most major reforms or initiatives of this government, had at the top of it financial implication nil. But I must say the states have correspondingly shown a lot of proactive support. States have come very, very strong in their own areas of influence to improve their operating efficiency. On this platform, I must compliment all the states of India which have joined Uday. Some are on the verge of joining Uday. By and large, my own sense is we'll have the whole map of India's saffron. I mean, saffron in the sense, I think that's the color the Uday.
Yeah, but it's all right. Like I said, much like interest rates, you won't complain about this too, right?
It's just that the Uday map that we have, where we map out all those who have joined Uday, is in the saffron color. Yeah.
Orange is our color too, so and it has been for a long time. So
well, there's a great alignment of interests.
Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you about big thermal power plants. Right? I know you don't usually like to comment on previous governments, but it was one of those.
No, I can make a lot of comments, but then it looks like I'm criticizing.
Yeah, but it was one of those flagship schemes of the previous government, and several of them ran into all sorts of trouble. We've talked about your efforts to revive hydro. We've talked about the focus on solar. We've seen this huge effort on solar. We've talked about the efforts on wind. What about huge power plants? The 4,000 megawatt power plants and the ultra mega power plants. Do you have any plans in that direction?
No, the UMPPs was a good idea. I don't deny that at all. So please don't. I mean, I will not criticize just because it was somebody else's program. And if you recall, Prime Minister Modi from the day he took office has acknowledged that, of course, governments in the years before him have done a lot of work. Some good, some bad, some even ugly. But we must recognize a good project where there is one. And UMPPs, to my mind, was a good idea. The flaw in the UMPP was that there was no plug and play in that. So what we saw was only Sasan and maybe the Tata UMPP, Mundra, on imported coal.
That's right.
Only 2 UMPPs came up. The others ran into problems of land acquisition and environment. Environment was not a problem. I think largely land acquisition. Both in Tamil Nadu, in
Andhra Pradesh.
Jharkhand. Andhra Pradesh, they are not yet.
No, is that in Tilaya?
Tilaya is Jharkhand. So, when I became minister, this has been a question posed to me in almost every forum that I have addressed. I had taken a decision in my mind that the UMPPs should be encouraged, but on a plug and play basis. I should ensure complete availability of water, land, environment clearance, no forest coming in the mine, proper mine attached to it, to ensure that it is a viable project which when somebody bids for it, is able to implement in the timelines and generate power. Point 1. Point 2, India today has a situation of surplus capacities, and surplus by a mine. It's not a small surplus. Thanks to the efforts of the government, we've been able to add nearly 45,000 megawatt of thermal capacity in our first 2 years. A lot of projects stalled at all over the country have been put back on track and commissioned. Some estimates suggest that there continue to be over 50 to 60,000 megawatts of thermal projects which are in the pipeline at different places. Of course, the unresolved projects now have reduced to a very small one-page list in large 14-point font. I know that the State Bank chairman just sent me that list a few days back. So we are by and large been able to resolve most issues, and the balance also I stand committed to resolving. In this scenario where plant load factors have fallen, given the huge capacity expansion, I thought a little bit of a pause will not do the nation any harm, and use this time, this pause, to improve the documentation of UMPPs, improve the bidding processes, make sure we can get enough land in hand so projects won't get stressed going forward, make sure the mine has no forest area, all the back-end processes. So my teams are focusing on that. I almost have a document ready for going to cabinet for UMPPs both on domestic coal and imported coal. Ideally, I don't want to do imported coal, but some coastal states
it might be easier to do that.
Are looking for it, so I'll have to just provide the option. Then it's for the state to determine its own future and fate. I cannot force one or the other, though I'm glad that some states have acceded to my request. Andhra had a project on imported fuel. When I talked to Chandrababu Garu, he immediately and spontaneously agreed to accept a mine and use the sea route to use domestic coal. I thought that's sensible because there's security and a price stability in that. But I'll provide for both, and again an exclusive for Mint since you have invited me here today. I'm even toying with the idea of UMPPs based on coal linkage. A large 4,000 megawatt plant, for example, at one of my mines where I do a lot of mining activity, but possibly don't have enough evacuation ability. So I'm trying to build around a document and an ecosystem where we could even have UMPPs not based on mine with it, but based on a coal linkage, where I guarantee or I ensure that the bidder will get coal from the mine of maybe Coal India or any other company, and they can set up a UMP. I think that would be the most attractive and the finest priced UMPPs. Am I right, Mr. Hasda? We may possibly get the lowest power price.
You would.
Well, my view about Coal India investments in thermal plants are a little different. I believe Coal India should now demonstrate its respect for the environment and invest in solar, wind and hydro. Get green and renewable now.
Yeah. Okay, quick update on Ujala. Where is it?
Best checked online, right? Well, Ujala clearly is one example, a shining example of a slogan that Prime Minister Modi gave before the election: speed, skill and scale. I don't think there can be a finer example of effectively using these three buzzwords. Ujala was handled skillfully, its financing was done skillfully. The speed with which, between the time we conceptualized the program and we implemented it, was probably unparalleled in the history of such large projects in India. And the number is changing as we speak. Every minute you get a new number of the number of bulbs that go out. And scale. Ujala, ladies and gentlemen, has scaled up the LED distribution program that EESL, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, a Government of India company, used to implement in the good old days with a large subsidy, from 600,000 LED bulbs per year. 600,000 per year. Of course, those were 7-watt bulbs. To 600,000 per day. That's a ramp up of close to 250 or 300 times. And as we speak, we have distributed, or rather sold is the right word, without a single rupee of subsidy. 100 and, oh my God, the number keeps changing every time I try to read. 167,764,748 LED bulbs so far. Only one company sells. What the private sector is selling is different. Private sector up till May had sold 80 million bulbs, and today I was at an Elcoma program. They told me they sell at an average 10 million a month. So you add 4 more months, they would have done about 120 million by now. So 167 million plus 120, we are close to 300 million, close to 300 million LED bulbs, having replaced the traditional old incandescent or CFL bulbs. Now, the dimension of this program is to replace 770 million bulbs by 2019. And just to set the context to your illustrious audience, only what the EESL has sold will save the consumers of India 23.87 crore every day. Annualized, it's about 8,000 crore rupees savings in your electricity bills. All of you who have changed to LEDs. By the time I complete my project, the savings to the consumers will be 40,000 crores every year, only by replacing LED bulbs. Of course, environmentally, we'll also reduce carbon dioxide emission by about 80 million tons a year between the LED street lights and the LED bulbs at home. So this is the kind of game-changing dimensions that this government is working on. We don't believe in just giving a SOP in terms of a subsidy given to consumers. We want to empower the consumers of India to save on their electricity bill through their own efforts and through their energy efficiency efforts.
All right, last question from me, and then we'll take a couple of questions from the audience. I hope you have some time. Currently, per capita consumption of electricity in India is around 1,000 units. In China, it's around 4,000, and in the West, it's around 15,000, the US. What do you see increasing this?
Clearly, if the country continues on the growth path that we have embarked on, and to my mind, India is poised to look at an 8 to 10% growth. Personally, I think it should be double-digit growth. not for 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, but for the next 2 or 3 or 4 decades. That's the kind of India that Prime Minister Modi and his team is envisaging, is working to create and creating the foundation for. In that scenario, I believe electricity has an important role to play. If we can keep it affordable, if we ensure India's energy security, if we plan our energy infrastructure in a sustainable manner, long-lasting manner, to my mind, we can ensure that power tariffs in India, which used to have a runaway increase over the last 12 or 15, 20 years, can be maintained at current levels going forward. And Uday will have an important role to play in that. If all of us and all the states seriously implement Uday, my own sense is that by 2019, the annual saving to the power sector as a whole, due to the implementation of Uday, against a business as usual scenario, is about 1,80,000 crores every year. 1,80,000 crores. So I feel if India moves down this path sincerely, we can actually imagine 5 or 7 years of stable power pricing. Save and except states which mess up their discoms, despite all the monitoring and effort that we are putting in. In that scenario, my own sense is we can at least triple, if not quadruple, though it could be somewhere in between 3 or 4x by 2030 to 32, what we are consuming today. Now, China went up to 3,500, more because it had this 30-year run of 8 to 10% growth. If India has a similar run going forward, I see no reason why in the next 30 years, India cannot cross even more than China, maybe go up to 5,000 units a person. But we need that long period of sustained economic growth. Only one difference between the China story or what happened in the West and India. In most of these countries, the effort was to expand the energy consumption. In our country and in our scheme of things, we are dovetailing that very massively with energy efficiency. And energy efficiency and conservation, in fact, comes naturally to an Indian mindset. At least I know, I don't know about, or probably Mr. Jha or Mr. Jain or Mr. Razdan. You're much younger, so I don't know about you. But at least our generation, our parents never allowed us to leave the room without switching off the light, the fan. I didn't have air conditioners at my home when I was young. So today,
I don't think anyone did back then.
Today, we call up the office, or if we are leaving from office, the peon or the driver is expected to call up home. सब लाइट चालू करके रखो, सब एसी चालू होने चाहिए, साहब आए तो रूम ठंडा मिले. So things have changed over the years. We are trying to take India back to our glorious past when we cared for every bit of energy that we used to consume, and wasteful consumption was looked down upon. Unlike the Western story, where they are consumption-driven economies. In fact, even at the Paris Agreement, which we have ratified on Mahatma Gandhiji's birthday, 2nd of October, even in the Paris Agreement, on India's, particularly Prime Minister Modi's persistent insistence, we've been able to add sustainable lifestyle as one of the goals for the whole world to follow.
Perfect. I'm going to take just 3 questions. We'll take all 3 together. Raise your hands. Someone will come to you. Yes, please. Introduce yourself. Make sure it's a question.
Hello. I'm Yazad Umbrigar from Siemens Limited.
You know, if you hold the mic like this,
Yeah.
because this takes it to the remote unit. And if you keep it close to your mouth, I'll be able to hear you better.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Yazad Umbrigar from Siemens Limited. My question is, there is still a gap of price between renewable and conventional power. Renewable power is still costlier than conventional power, and now we are investing more and more into renewable. So the same investment can go into the social sector for the poor. So why are we compensating that in investing in renewables?
All right. We'll take all 3 questions and then he'll answer them in one go. Sunil has a question. We'll come to him. Can someone get a mic to Sunil, please? Meanwhile, if someone else has a mic, someone is... Can you go to the back of the room, please? I think these people who are in areas of darkness never get heard. Right? Right at the back. There's a gentleman there. Yeah. Sunil.
We all know that we have been subsidizing the underprivileged of the society in terms of the power pricing. This government has been trying to move away from the subsidy regime, and whatever subsidies are there, they're focusing on DBT. Can we have a model for the power pricing also, so that the DISCOMs are left alone? And they are able to price the power evenly, not kill the industrial and the commercial users to that extent.
Okay. Last question.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Ankit Diwan. I have a question. Can the existing power plants, they change to a hybrid model so that we can install a CSP over the existing thermal power plants, so that the steam from the CSP can run the turbine, and the same thermal power plants can be converted to a renewable wave as well?
Okay, thank you.
The younger students?
They are actually Mint reporters.
Oh. That's impressive. We have a young set of...
Yeah, we have a very young...
I actually thought they were college students. Well, to the question about investing in social sector instead of renewables, I don't think they are one or the other. You don't have to exclude one to achieve the other. Both can coexist. India certainly needs to invest heavily in the social sector, but I don't see any reason why we should not invest in renewables. Both can coexist, and frankly, if we don't invest in renewables, I suspect going forward with the kind of reports that are emanating about climate change, the dangers of climate change, the dangers of global temperature rising up to 2 degrees, we may not have a social sector to take care of going forward. So I think the nation will have to start appreciating and recognizing that renewables is an integral part of our very survival, of the very survival of India as an entity which does not have to face earthquakes and typhoons and thunderstorms and droughts and floods year in and year out. Many of these are being traced back to the problems of climate change. So I think both should coexist. Renewables, as I said earlier in response to the hydro question, also has a great deal to do with our energy security. Because the sun and wind, water will never go away from us. We'll always have that. So that adds to our energy security. And any social scheme will be incomplete without energy security. So I think we should focus on both simultaneously. Sunil, please don't politically kill me. So let me reiterate, you seem to have a wrong impression. This government is not moving away from subsidies. Let me make it loud and clear. I am not encouraging subsidies where it is not required. So we did the Give It Up campaign. Dharmendra was here earlier. An outstanding success he has done with the Give It Up campaign. And without forcing anybody. I hope you have given up your LPG subsidy. You have a pipe gas. Now, we didn't want to do it by force like it was done in earlier years and had to be withdrawn. We wanted the people's participation and give the joy of giving and joy of sharing to the people. And I'm delighted at the wonderful response the Prime Minister's appeal on the Give It Up campaign got us. So for us, subsidy, where it is desirable and necessary, has to be given. But where it is avoidable and people can afford to be on their own, it's not required. So industry, I believe, can afford to pay power prices what they are paying. I've recently done an assessment, and I found India's power prices, even on industry, is not significantly more than most parts of the world. Maybe China may be a little lesser, but otherwise, by and large, nowhere in the world are power prices any lesser than in India. In fact, on the domestic tariff, our tariffs are significantly lower than most countries in the world. And ladies and gentlemen, the poor of this country still have millions and millions of families with no energy access. I promise you, in these new villages that we are electrifying, when we go and we appeal to people, why don't you take connection now? There's power in your village. There are times officers are confronted with a situation that the person refuses to apply and take a connection because he can't afford the bill. We still have challenges in this country which we have to address. We'll have to keep it affordable for the poor of India. Farmers' distress is a subject well known to all of us. Till we are able to upgrade our farmers' ability to earn better incomes, till there's some modern technology usage in farming, till they can stand on their own independent feet economically without subsidies, I think giving a little subsidy or support to the farmers of India, to the poor of India, to the socially deprived who for years have in fact lived in darkness is not a bad thing. It's something we should all happily participate in, happily collaborate with. DISCOMs have a regulator who normally works out pricing for DISCOMs. One can argue that in some cases there's political interference, but Gujarat is a shining example of how you can turn around your DISCOM, convert a big loss into a profit in a short span of time. Prime Minister Modi, as Chief Minister, did it in 3 or 4 years. From a huge loss, he converted it into a very respectable profit without increasing the power tariff significantly. In fact, I had done a recent study. The power tariff increase in Gujarat in the last 12 to 14 years is the lowest in the country in percentage terms. Lowest in the country. And it of course makes a profit. And when we were doing Uday, Gujarat signed only for the operational efficiencies. They are quite operationally also quite efficient, but they are looking to further improve that. So I got very wild. I said, how can Gujarat not be a part of the financial package in Uday? So the officer sheepishly came and told me, sir, they have no debt. The total debt of Gujarat DISCOM is 1800 crores. Now what financial package will they take in 1800 crores? So it's all possible. It's all doable. It needs political leadership. And with good political leadership, with vision and decisive leadership, there is no reason why any state or any DISCOM needs to be stressed. And lastly, to the young man's question on CSP, some studies have happened on that. So far, it's an economically unviable proposition. CSP by itself is a very expensive mode of power, but I don't have a closed mind. I'm not ostrich about it. I'm happy to have more research and more experimentation on that. And if at some point we can reach that inflection where it becomes viable, I'll be the happiest person to encourage all thermal plants to use their excess steam, combine it with CSP, and create a hybrid which can gradually move these thermal plants also into producers of renewable energy. It's a brilliant idea, but we still need to see it mature into a economically and fundamentally strong technology proposition. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I know it's late, but for his patience in answering the questions and taking questions from the audience, I think he deserves a louder round of applause. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Goyal and Mr. Sukumar, for the very insightful conversation, and thank you once again, sir, for taking time out for us and being with us today. I would request Mr. Sukumar to present to the Honorable Minister a token of appreciation from Mint.